But I tell them just do it, like start one and just start doing it and do it consistently. And the first ones are going to suck. Like you're going to be bad at it, but just keep doing it and you'll get better.
The thing I love the most about Austin FC is like how much there's like the cultural component of it. Yeah. And if it was just the game, like I love the game and I would be interested in it no matter what.
Esto es Otra, por favor. This is one more, please. Welcome to Otra, por favor. This is Coque Martinez.
This is David. How are you, Coque?
Good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. I'm excited. We have a very special guest today.
Special couple guests we're very honored to have on our podcast. You guys might know them from the Moontower podcast. That's the reason we're bringing them on the show, to get to know them a little bit more and let them tell their story. So without further adu, I'll leave it to you guys for introductions.
Hey, y'all. I'm Landon Cotham from Moontower Soccer, and
I'm Jeremiah Bentley from Moontower Soccer. We're excited to join you guys and talk about the show and talk about Austin FC and all these things we love. Thanks for having us down. Thanks for letting us have some wine.
Yeah.
And let's get into it.
For sure. Like I said, we were talking earlier, the way that Moontower fits into the landscape of podcasts is every time I listen to the show, I feel like I'm stepping into my favorite class, and we're about to go over some of my favorite topics. So I definitely appreciate what you guys do, but just wanted to start off like a simple question. How are you guys doing? How are you guys feeling? How's the week going for y'all?
pretty good for me. Yeah. My wife is starting to travel for work again, so I'm just hanging out at home by myself with the dog pretty much.
Nice.
Yeah, it's good. No, my kids had COVID like 2 weeks ago, and they were fine. So my older one, he was like asymptomatic, and he thought it was the most magical 10 days of his life because he just got to sit at home in his room and not go to school and play video games. So we're past that and just kind of back out in the world and enjoying it.
Right on. Yeah, it's been really weird to navigate in this world of COVID or anything like that. I'm glad your kid's fine, and I'm glad you guys are here with us today. So, what do you guys? Can you tell us a little bit about what Moontower podcast is for some of our listeners who might not be familiar?
Yeah, so you said it felt like going to class. I hope it's not too much homework for anybody, but I've talked pretty openly about this, it being based, like kind of the idea of the show being based on a national show called the Total Soccer Show, where they do a lot of research, do their homework, bring facts to the table, and kind of keep hot takes to a minimum, and try to do research and try to understand the game better and understand why things are happening better. And that's the energy that we're trying to bring to Austin Soccer with Moontower Soccer. And so, we still give our opinions and talk about things like more fun things, but I'd say like the basis of the show is trying to inform an audience that's just learning about MLS. Awesome.
That's good stuff, man. No, definitely. I think, every time I've listened to one of your episodes, being a soccer player, growing up being a soccer player in the world of soccer, you get kind of like an arrogance of the game. Like you think you know everything, but no, really it's been a humbling experience because especially with the MLS formatting being quite differently from other leagues, man, we can talk about that all day. And I think we did try to talk about it all day at some point, and it was a conversation that was difficult to keep going.
We really didn't know about what to talk about, but we tried.
Yeah, it gets confusing for sure. And that's one thing that, we all come soccer in different places, right? We played, and I followed Premier League for a long time, but like MLS is this very unique, like a different animal unto itself. And I think it helps enjoy the game if you kind of understand the way that the league works and how things happen. So that's what we're trying to share. Cause none of it's, terribly logical, in a lot of ways, right? There's all these weird little rules. And I spent so much time like on the MLS website looking at roster designations and like all these kinds of things, but they may matter, to like how Austin FC is going to like be good or bad or not or whatever. And so that's what we try to bring to it, is kind of a fresh eye and kind of a we neither of us have been MLS fans for super long, so we're in some way like learning it as we go along.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I got into it when we found out Austin was going to have a team. But before, it was really hard for me because like I've got like Liverpool versus Manchester United, or I've got San Jose versus Montreal. You know, which one am I going to watch? You know, and so that's been just picking that up and learning it, and then just like kind of sharing what we're learning has been really rewarding.
Right on.
It's crazy that you say that because it is tough for us. Like you said, for me too. Before Austin FC, I had never watched MLS like a game, and once we had the team, you know, I was trying to learn the process, trying to learn the rules and all the stuff like that, and like you said, we're learning as we go. Tell us a little bit more about how you guys decided to create Moontower. Why Moontower? Why create a podcast?
Yeah, you want to tell this story because I feel like we've told it sometimes and it changes a little bit.
I think there's like a long version and a short version.
Yeah, we can give you whichever one you want.
So we were both involved with kind of like the minute that there started being rumors about an MLS team coming to town, Jeremiah and I both kind of got involved with the group that would become Austin Anthem. And so it was a very small group of people just like excited about the chance of getting MLS soccer here. And so we got involved with that. A lot of those guys had a podcast running already, and they were trying to kind of shake it up and get some more people in, and just like whoever showed up, you're on the show that week. And after a while, it got to where like Jeremiah and I were the ones that were kind of like the ones showing up every week. And so like, okay, we're on the show. And after a while, it's like, okay, this is kind of our show. And then after a bit, we kind of decided that we wanted to like have our own independent thing that wasn't connected to a supporters group, and just have a little bit more freedom with what we wanted the show to be. And so we decided to do that, and that was how long ago?
That was June of 2020. Well, I mean, it was a very specific reason that we needed to do our own, because I quit Austin Anthem, which made it very hard to do the Austin Anthem podcast, you know? So like I was on it. And one of the things that like made it, because we'd done probably 15 episodes of that show together and kind of gotten to where we sort of, when we had a rhythm, we kind of knew what we wanted to do and what we didn't want to do. And one of the things that's really important to us is to just be like what we think is the best Austin FC podcast. Like there's a lot of other really good MLS podcasts and Premier League podcasts and World Soccer podcasts and stuff like that. We never wanted to do that. We always had a vision for being like the voice of Austin. But yeah, when I left Anthem, I was like, oh, so I guess I don't get to do a podcast anymore unless I convince Landon to like, you know, come along and find a separate thing. And so we found Capital City Soccer in like June of 2020, which is a website. It was like a website and they post news stories, but they didn't have a podcast. We had a podcast. We had no interest in like writing. And so it made a good connection. And we did that for like 6 or 7 months and then came up with the Moontower name. And
that was kind of driven by the Striker Texas. Yeah. They asked us to come on as their Austin FC podcast, but we'd like just changed the name and were attached to this other website. And so we felt terrible. Like the Capital City guys, like they're great and they're still doing really cool stuff. But yeah, we're just like, oh crap, we have to like change the name again. So
can you tell us a little bit about the Striker for those of our audience who don't know or aren't familiar with the Striker?
Yeah, for sure. It's essentially Texas soccer coverage. And so there's dedicated writers to each of the 3 MLS teams. There's folks who write about lower league stuff, women's soccer, college soccer. They do some high school stuff every once in a while. So it's a subscription-based service, but it's not that expensive. I think it's like $5 a month or something. And so for like the type of coverage you get, especially compared to like what's available elsewhere, it's really great. And so we were honored whenever they came to us and asked us to be a part of it.
That's cool.
Yeah, cheaper than only. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know which ones you're subscribing to, but yeah, for sure. Yeah, and another good thing that they do is they have a Dallas-based writer, they have a Houston-based writer, and they have an Austin-based writer, and they send people to every home game and every away game. So it's people are going and like seeing the games in person and writing about the games. It's not just sitting at home and watching on TV or whatever, but they really have made a commitment to being unique in the space as far as like a commitment to having people out on the road and watching soccer.
No, it's cool. It's cool hearing how your podcast is formed in a very organic way, and you guys have been at the Austin FC cookout for a while now. You guys have been a part of the fan base organizations and kind of developed into your own thing. Can you recall some of like the earlier challenges when you were starting out to do your own like Moontower podcast?
I'd say one of the reasons that we started so early is we wanted to be good by the time the team started playing, right? Like, you know, it's like we're going to make a bunch of episodes, and some of them are going to be okay, and some of them aren't. But, like, by the time that the season starts, we'll kind of know what we're doing. And that was sort of the vision for that. So we started doing it every 2 weeks, maybe every 3 weeks, and then every 2, and then we got into the rhythm. And as far as, like, mistakes that we made, you know, I don't know if I have anything that was like really bad. I mean, one of the things that we try to do is like when we have guests, we have them for a reason. And like I always come with this idea, like, Landon, we can get this famous person on the show. He's like, but what's this? Like, what's it going to contribute, right? Like, what do they have to bring to the table and stuff? And he's like, we try to be intentional about making sure that if we're going to have somebody on, there's like a reason to do it, and they're adding to the conversation.
Yeah, and I think I've had other folks ask me like, what's your advice for, I'm thinking about starting a podcast. What's your advice? And not that we're necessarily the best people to give advice about starting a podcast, but I tell them just do it. Like start one and just start doing it and do it consistently. And the first ones are going to suck. Like you're going to be bad at it, but just keep doing it and you'll get better. And like, I've seen that you guys have put out a lot of stuff now or doing it consistently. And that's the best thing that you can do to get better is just do it.
Yeah, right on. There's a lot of lessons to be learned there. And I think, one of our biggest fires underneath us is definitely Richie. He's definitely been advocating that same thing. Just do it. You have an idea, do it. Don't wait for me to like say, oh, okay, yeah, that's cool. Just go for it. So that's cool to hear you guys say that too. If you guys don't mind, let's take a little step back. Can y'all tell us like what brought you out to the game? You know, what experience you have with the game of football, and like what it is that you love about it so much now in the present time.
You want to start that one?
Yeah, I'll start that one. So I think like any small child, like I grew up, you know, you play soccer when you're a kid, and then at least in Texas, right, you drift away from it and you play American football, right? I mean, that's what I did. So I played football through high school, and I mean, that's just like a sports guy, right? So you watch World Cup, national team, and things like that. Mm-hmm. But it was actually when my oldest son was born. Like babies don't sleep, and so like 6 a.m. when you get up on a weekend, like what's on? Premier League's on, right? You know, and so like I fell in love with Premier League and fell in love with Liverpool from watching that, and really got back into the game after a long time out of it. And it's such a good. I mean, y'all know. I mean, you talked about like growing up and playing. I mean, y'all know this. Like it's such a good sport. Now sometimes I'm like I should have like stuck with it. Like it never drifted away from it.
Yeah.
Because it's like I mean the flow is great. The community's great. Like the passion is awesome. I have grown to appreciate the fact that a game starts and ends in 2 hours now, you know, because like you watch a
college football game,
Longhorn games like 4 or 5 hours,
Yeah.
you know. I had the Texas OU game last year, like I had to drive to Dallas and like got stuck and it was a 4-hour drive and like the game was going when I left Austin and the game was still going when I got to Dallas, right? You know, and it's just
that's crazy.
And there's so much downtime too, right? Because that's like, you know, in the average football there's like 13 minutes of action or something. So I think I've just like grown to appreciate the sport even more now as an adult, and that's what I love about it.
Yeah, for me, similar background. Like we are both from pretty small towns, and I'm from up in the Texas Panhandle, and soccer was not even as a kid. Like I couldn't play soccer; there was not an option to play. Wow. And so I think the only way I could have is like driving 20 minutes, and I could have played until I was like 10 or something, and then it just would have ended again. But my interest in soccer started because of my interest in traveling. Mm-hmm. So I was lucky enough to be able to study abroad when I was in college and was in Spain. And so
what part?
I was in Barcelona.
Oh, what better place to be?
Yeah. And so I was like, I don't know anything about soccer. I had watched, I think in 2008, I think the Euros were on, and one of my friends was really into it. So we watched the Euros together, and that was like the first soccer I'd ever watched. And then in 2010 is when I got to study abroad. I was like, I don't know anything about this place. I don't know anything about soccer, but it's important to them there. And so I started doing research about FC Barcelona and like getting into that. I was like, oh, apparently the best player in the world plays for them. I should learn about him. I should like just learn about this sport because it's culturally important to these people.
Yeah.
And that's why I kind of started paying attention. I was like, oh, this is actually very cool. And that team in 2009, 2010, that Barca team was like
beast team.
they're good, but like easy to like as well. They're fielding like 7 to 10 local players on a given game, and so a lot of fun. And then it came back, and the World Cup was that summer, and so I spent all summer watching
Spain
the World
won
Cup.
that year, didn't they?
They did, yeah.
2010. Wow.
Yeah, so like some of my guys that I'd like fallen in love with won the World Cup, and so I was like, man, this is it. This is what I'm doing now.
This is a sport
and
to
so
follow.
just like followed it over the next however many years, and then ended up in Austin about 6 years ago, a few years before the kind of like the rumors started that we might be getting an MLS team here, and just kind of fell into place. And as soon as I heard like, oh, there's these other idiots who are going to spend all their time thinking about a team that might not ever come, I was like, I'm there. Let's do it.
That's good, man. Y'all hit it early, though. That's what's the best about it. No, that's great. And I think for us here at Otra, por favor, we definitely share that love of the game. It's just pretty wild to me that y'all grew up in places where it was really hard to play because, I'm from Houston, Texas, and it's a kind of a different environment. Texas now is known to be like a hotbed of soccer in particular cities like Dallas, Houston, and now Austin, I guess. And growing up, every park that I went to, there was someone playing, no matter what, in an informal style, and there was like a good structure for like high school club soccer. But I'm glad that you guys are here and we're witnessing something different happening in Austin, soccer city.
Yes.
Yeah, we hear that. Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of the game. I mean, it's like, I think basketball is like the American sport that's like the closest to it, right? Natively, as far as like you just need a ball and you just like roll out and go on minimal, And I grew up, I played football, I played baseball, I play all these things that like you have to have a field and equipment and people playing positions and stuff like that, And so I think it's just really appreciate the game because of that.
Well, you guys are always welcome to come play with us. I know you're probably super busy, but every Tuesday, Thursday, we play at a little pocket park.
Yeah, Bailey Park.
Off of 35th in Lamar called Bailey. And, man, it's anyone that shows up can play. There's no question about it.
For sure.
Well, Landon's picked it back up recently, too.
Oh, yeah. Aren't you playing on a pickup team now? Or no, actually a formal structured soccer?
Playing my first, like, formal, structured league. And I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm excited about it.
Oh, man. That's awesome. That's good to hear.
That's always a learning process, man, but you'll get there. Tell us about how was it? You said that before we even had a team, right? You were already forming the podcast and trying to talk about soccer and stuff to make it, to make people hear about it, right? How hard was that part? Not knowing the players, not knowing what was going to happen, and just starting, out of the blue.
It was hard to fill time sometimes, which is like at first we were doing it like once a month, right? And so like the team would put out a press release about like I don't know, low flow toilets and it was like the dumbest stuff.
I mean, like, we were early on and just taking all like we would talk about every sponsor and like every anything that they would put out because we were so starved for content. And the example I use is that. This guy, Jordan Inke, who's the VP of Stadium Operations, which is like the guy that oversees like the building itself and like all the building. Like he went to a homeowners association meeting, and like I found the minutes of that homeowners association meeting online. So we spent like 20 minutes talking about like Jordan Inke is talking to like the North Gracie Woods Homeowners Association about like ingress and egress plans and like transit and buses and all that shit that we're really happy to not have to talk about now. But that was the Austin FC news at the time, right?
Yeah.
And there's like nobody else was covering it, so we're like, we're gonna cover it. That's what there
awesome.
is.
No, that's what I love about you guys. You guys go the extra mile for the information, for the research.
And now like we have 2 pages of notes, and we end up covering about half of it in like a weekly hour-long show. And so, I think that was the hardest part at first. Is just like I thought like, doing a podcast is hard because you have to like talk about all this stuff and try to sound smart. It was like, no, actually, there just wasn't anything to talk about.
Well, and that's like back to your question about like having a podcast and having advice. One of the things that we try to do is we try to keep it to an hour 5, an hour 10 or whatever, and there are things that are interesting to us that we leave off, right? Right. We just don't cover it in every week in every show because they're probably not that interesting to some of the audience. So we've learned like what things people connect to and what things matter to people and what things don't, And so if we have a light week, maybe we'll talk about a topic that if we have a really full show, we won't. And it's just knowing sort of like the attention span of your audience and like how much they're willing to give you.
Yeah, and also what I appreciate about Moontower is when y'all have like, you know, pretty heavy, dense information, but then you balance it out with something as silly as like, all right, what's like the weirdest concession stand food you've had at certain stadiums, or like, oh, what about the color of the jersey? Like, it's coming out this new mint color. Are you for it? Or you're not? I mean, those are typically things I would think I wouldn't care about, but when I'm listening to you guys, I'm like, man, I might care about this. You know what? Maybe I do have an
Why
opinion.
not to buy, right?
Maybe ice cream nachos are not the way to go. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of weird, but no, that's cool, guys. So being that your podcast is very informative, how much time do you guys actually give to the research part of it?
It kind of depends on the week, but I would say on average, like a couple hours. Well, like during the seasons, we're watching the game.
Yeah.
I'm rewatching the game usually. And then if there's other news, like trying to do research on that. If there's a new player, I try to watch film on the new player. So on certain weeks, it's like several hours. And then other weeks, it's a little bit easier and I can knock it out. Like not counting watching the game, I can knock it out in like an hour. But it kind of depends. But it's not ever no time.
Yeah, I mean, and part of it's like, I like to think of it as about how much extra time that I spend doing it, because like I'm gonna read every article and I'm gonna watch every video, you know, whether I'm talking about it on a podcast or not, you know. So
absorb it in a way.
Yeah, I'm gonna absorb. Yeah, I'm gonna do it. So like the extra time we spend the extra time I spend every week on a game is like I rewatch the game, because like I'm in 106, which is right next to the supporter section, but it's in the South End, and that's not a really good. Well, I just want to get drunk and like watch soccer and have fun, you know. So it's not like a real tactical.
Yeah.
Like I can't really describe gameplay and stuff like that. Like that initial, like I need to go back and watch it on TV, and then writing the outline probably takes like an hour a week usually for the show. So like my wife would tell you I live my life, you know, for the podcast, but really I'm living my life for Austin FC and like using the podcast as an excuse, to take in all that stuff.
And it's like on some weeks it's like really fun and easy and I want to do it, but then like in the middle of the season and we've lost 5 games in a row and there's no news and nothing good has happened.
The morale's low. The publications are probably negative. Like,
And then like
I was talking crap about it too.
Yeah, and then how do you find a different way to talk about it, right? You're like, shit, Josh Wolf, like, you know, like we got a bad lineup again, and this guy screwed up, and we can't finish in front of goal. You know, you just like you have to. It's hard to find interesting in different ways. You know, like, sometimes to cover that news.
I really don't want to watch this game again, but I have to.
Yeah, it's definitely a labor of love, right? Tell us a little bit about your day jobs. Do y'all have do y'all come from backgrounds that are with communication or research, or what are your day jobs? Is that
you kind of come from communications?
Yeah. So by day, I run marketing and community affairs for an insurance company.
Right.
So it's a communications background, and then I mean it works out really well for Austin FC, because like Austin FC there's a ton of community work going on too, and it's one of the things like Landon talked about. Going to Spain and like falling in love with this game because that was important to the culture, and that's the thing I love the most about Austin FC is like how much there's like the cultural component of it.
Yeah.
And if it was just the game, like I love the game, and I would be interested in it no matter what. But the fact that it's like a thing that brings the whole city together, and it brings these super talented and creative people that make all these badass videos and tifo and artwork and like all these that I can never imagine to do, because I'm just like an insurance marketing guy, you know. And it's just. That is the part that is the most rewarding and sustaining for me, that I love the most about all of it. Is like meeting guys like y'all who are just like doing cool, interesting, creative stuff. So that's kind of where there's the connection, and that's where I spend too much time on Slack. I mean, I have a job that lets me spend time in Los Verdes Slack all day. It's probably the most important thing about my job, I think.
I have a background in audio, so I ended up getting a business degree was my like bachelor's degree, but before that I did an associate's degree in audio recording, and so stepping into the podcast was a little bit easier for us for that reason, like not having to learn all this new equipment and stuff. I kind of knew how to do it before, but as far as other work goes, I've done a lot of different things, which none of which directly lead to knowing how to make a podcast, but I've just like learned how to do a lot of different things, and so learning new things is kind of fun and interesting to me. So I've really enjoyed just like picking up the new challenge and trying to get as good as we can at it.
Nice. cool. And like kind of like Jeremiah was saying, it's really nice to see how everybody with like different skill sets can come together for like the purpose of soccer, of Austin FC, and contribute their own little grain of sand and creating this beautiful thing, like the game day experience and like everything that leads up to that. It's just what, you know, a lot of people don't see, but some people like really give their heart out to it, and really is what makes a community special.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We talk about, I mean, and the club's done a good job of using that, right? Like on the billboards and the videos. And, you know, you think like when I would watch games on TV when in other cities, I'm like, oh, there's just like this collection of people. And now I'm like, that's my friend, blah, blah, blah. And that's my friend, blah, right? You know, and in the ads, you know, they use like, you see like people, you know, and people that have a story and people you connect with, you know, and all those, which I think is really cool. I think the club's done a really good job of like connecting to Austin in like a real way and not just Armadillos and Stevie Ray Vaughan and, you know, whatever, but really like finding true stories. Yeah, they're real stories.
Not the generic stuff of what Austin is to outsiders.
And to a degree, following the lead of the supporters. You hear so many stories of like other MLS teams where the club essentially tries to like step on what the supporters are doing. It's like they want to control every part of the environment. And I think Austin, I think there's been some times when the club and the supporters groups have butted heads, but for the most part, I think they've done a good job of just saying like, okay, we're going to follow your lead. Like what y'all are doing is amazing. So we're not going to try to change any of that. We're just going to try to connect ourselves to it.
Yeah. You can see pretty much how it worked, whatever they have done. It's been like a cool thing, you know? And I feel like that's why probably the organization as a team wants to like, let them have it, let them do whatever they want to do, you know, which is cool. And just like you're saying, too, I feel like for us, especially for me, like whenever I watch soccer, that's all. Usually I'm only thinking about the players and what's going on during the game, right? But now that we have a team, I have a whole different perspective of what to look, you know, the community getting together, all the tifos, all the anthems, you know, all the little songs that we chant when they're playing. It's like a whole different meaning for me now, you know. Before I would just turn on the TV and watch a soccer game. That was it, you know. Not pay attention to what was going on around it, you know. And I feel like that's a good thing that I guess Austin FC has done for me.
Yeah, the community part has been the coolest part of the whole thing.
Yeah, and I think the greatest thing about that is it's contagious. Like you experience it once and you want to be part of it, and you want to find a way to contribute and play your part and see what you can do to bring something to the table, to the festivities, and to the experience. So I'm glad you guys are here, man. And I actually want to know a little bit about, now that you guys have had the platform for a while and your audience has grown, I know that how have you found ways to interact with your audience through your podcast?
I mean, early on, I feel like we just knew all of our listeners already. Like we look at the download numbers and like think about how many people in town we knew that were paying attention. It was like, yeah, it matches up pretty well. But it's changed now. Like it's big enough now that there's like most of the people who listen to the show, we don't know who they are, but and like COVID kind of ruined that a little bit. We got to meet some folks like at games and things like that, but the last little stretch of time, we've done a few little events and have gotten to meet some more folks. And we actually just put out a call on the show one week where, like, during the stadium construction, Jeremiah and I and a few other guys would just go out and sit next to the construction site and just drink beer on the road. Because it's like COVID's going crazy, so we need to be outside. We're gonna have some space and whatever. And so that was what we did. We do it like a couple times a month. And so we're just like, we should do that again for the new year. And so we just put out the call, and we had like 30 people come and hang out, just drink beer on the street.
That's awesome.
In the middle of the day. So stuff like that's cool. Like it's been fun to just like connect with more people and just learn about other people's kind of connection to the game and to the team. And talking about going back to the community part of it, like people that we would have never met or had any reason to talk to are some like people I consider close friends now because of this team and because of this community that's grown around it. And so being able to use the podcast to do that as well has been really cool.
Yeah, and I'll back up. Agree with that on the point of like as far as what we do. Like I mean, I'm in like I'm an insurance marketing guy, right? You know, and there's like so many people that I've run with and bike with and watch games with that I would never have, that are like wonderful, beautiful people that I would never have engaged with, like just in terms of like my normal life, because I've got this little bubble, right? And you meet, you spend time with people who are like you and have the same interests as you as whatever, you know. But like,
it's not that we wouldn't want to. It's just like wouldn't have had the opportunity.
I just never would have met them, you know. And so that part's been really, really cool to be able to do that. And then like I brought my dad to a game, and the fact that we went to Hop Squad and people are like, "Are you Jeremiah from the podcast?" And my dad's like, "You're like a celebrity." I'm like, "I know.
You made it, son."
Hell yeah, exactly.
Just in a 1 mile radius of where we're standing.
Because I spent like 10 years at the University of Texas, and my dad was not very proud of me for a long time. So like to have him like, he's like, man, and he came home and told mom, he's like, Jeremiah knows everybody. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. That's cool. And it's all because of this. So it's real. I mean, it's like a privilege, and it's a blessing. And like every week we do a show, and I'm like, I don't know why somebody would listen to us talk about soccer. And then, you know, the numbers come out. I'm like, apparently people care. So like I appreciate that everybody's doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Landon, going back to your story about coming out to the construction site, I work in construction management, and I can tell you that was probably a unique experience for the people working out there. I don't think they're used to tailgaters and people watching them, cheering them on, bringing them water, offering them beer. Probably that's awesome.
They would see us and wave sometimes, and then the train would drive past. We were out by the train track, and the train would go past, and they'd honk the horn or wave at us.
It's crazy that you're saying that because, well, some friends, we try to actually drive there and then get off and kind of get close to the stadium, but we got kicked out. So you're lucky that you were able to just sit there and drink beer with people. That's cool.
You got to go to the backside where nobody's watching.
Well, and there's 3 semi-trucks that are parked over there, and the guys that own those trucks apparently had like break-ins.
Oh, dang.
In their trucks, because as soon as I showed up, that was the first person there. Like those 3 guys all came, walked over, and they're like,
What's the stuff?
What's going on? What are you doing?
A regular person here.
I'm just a guy with a soccer podcast and a chair. It'll be fine. And they were cool once they figured it out. Like, it's like obviously after 5 minutes, they're like, okay, you guys are not the people that we need to be worrying.
If y'all want to take a break, we'll watch your trucks for a while.
Cool, guys. And just to kind of cap off this topic, where do you see Moontower Podcast, the future of Moontower Podcast, fitting into this into the landscape of, you know, soccer, Austin, and just cultural podcasts?
Go ahead, Landon. I feel like you have a better. Landon talks more about vision stuff, and I would like get excited by an idea in the moment, and then he either goes with it or he talks me out of it.
I kind of just want to keep doing more of the same. Like, I don't think I necessarily want to change anything what we're doing. I mostly just want to get it in front of more people, and then as far as doing different things, I think we've talked about wanting to do more live events now that hopefully once COVID calms down and gets easier, we can do some live events, do some more video stuff, things that we weren't able to or weren't able to make time to do. And so I think things like that, just to find different ways to kind of expand our content and do that. But as far as the show goes, I think we just want to get better at doing the same thing we're already doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd like to look at other types of shows, or maybe, you know, in the same, like with the like Total Soccer Show has maybe like 3 or 4 different kinds of things that they talk about, you know, and inside of their same feeds. We've done, Landon was on like one episode of Moontower Soccer, which is basically just talking about the boys and how handsome they are.
That was pretty funny. That was a funny spinoff.
Yeah.
So whose idea was that?
I think I had kind of had somewhat of an idea of doing a different show, but then Mike and Steph, the other hosts that were on it with us, they had a more like concrete idea of like,
for sure,
this would be fun to do like this kind of show. I was like, if y'all want to do it, let's like during the off season, we're like, we can make one episode, and if it sucks and nobody likes it, we'll just never do it again. But we had a lot of fun with it, and I think they had fun, and we've got good feedback. I had people who listened to the regular show say like, yeah, I don't like that. It's like, okay, that's fine. It's like we'll make it separate episodes, and you can choose which ones you listen to. And then I had other people who don't like our show, and they were like, yeah, I don't care about the tactics stuff. Like, I don't care. But Moontower, I'm going to listen to that. It's like, all right, cool. We got different audiences. Yeah. So I think we're going to try to do more of that as well.
Yeah, it's hard to please everybody, but what you guys are doing is awesome.
Yeah.
You know, it already sounds super polished, and I'm sure it's only gonna get better from here, man. So can you tell everybody, all of our audience, where they can find your podcast?
Yeah, so Moontower Soccer, pretty much anywhere you can get podcasts. It's all audio. So, and then if you can go to moontowersoccer.com, and it has all the links to whatever podcatcher you use. And then on social media, I'm at El Viajero87.
Viajero.
El Viajero. And then you're at,
JBentley_ATX.
and then at Moontower Soccer on Twitter and Instagram. We're mostly on Twitter, but we do have an Instagram account as well.
Nice. Y'all be sure to give them a like and subscribe. This has been awesome, guys. I think we still have a little bit more to talk about, but we're going to be joined by Richie.
So, good to see you guys again. You guys are actually our first guest of 2022. So
What
that's
an honor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I feel like pressure now to.
No, none of that.
What do you feel pressured?
No, I mean, we gotta live up to being your first guest. I don't know. Yeah,
No, you got to deliver.
we gotta deliver. Yeah, we gotta deliver on whatever your expectations are.
Man, we got no
Probably
expectations.
lower than they were before.
No, I have lower expectations of myself. See, I like to start life with low balling it and then build up instead of like staying high
sound low.
and then I
Right.
can deliver, you know. So I started to be like, I don't know it, but then little by little, be like, oh dang, because I've started.
Always pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, because then there's times that I say like, I know this, and then I get to the place and I'm like, man, I forgot how it goes, and then it makes me like, I thought you knew, so it's like, rather just keep it low and then build from there. But yeah, man, like we've said like earlier, Coca and David said, thank you guys for coming. We linked up last year, or it was last year, like whenever Javi was interviewing for a work that he's got going on. So it was pretty cool, you know, the fact that like you guys were agreed, like you guys came and agreed, and the timing worked out for us as well. So, and also as one thing I wanted to talk about is just we had an episode a couple of weeks ago where we talked about us not knowing much about like the MLS, not knowing about like the allocation system, and not knowing about the structure of how things work. And for us is something that, like David said, we only worry about the part of the game itself. We only want to just worry about like who's in the field, who's playing, who's doing well, who's not, and that's it. But it feels like the MLS has so many things behind it to where it kind of benefits some players. But like we've had a player in the past, Mike Chavala, that talked about contract issues. He talked about how they were underpaid back in 2007, 2008, where his contract was, I think, $20,000 as a professional player. And right now, I believe, hopefully I'm right, but the minimum they can pay a player is $80,000, right?
I think for certain supplemental players, it can be as low as 60,000.
Okay.
But I think back in 2007, they were called developmental players. I think it was kind of like practice squad guys. They were making like 12,000.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
man, that's crazy.
2007. It's not that long ago, right?
Yeah, and
How are you going to grow sport paying a guy that much? You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
absolutely.
What kind of talent are you going to bring to the league?
that's like, man, imagine that over, 52. How many, like $100 a week, 200 a week, maybe, give or take.
I mean, you're the accountant, man. You tell me.
Like I said
I
earlier,
don't do math.
I have a memory of a goldfish.
right now.
I can analyze once I have the
4K?
spreadsheet and all the formula, but my wife is very good at like calculating stuff in her mind, and I'm always like, nah, let me put
Excel's
it.
for.
Give me the spreadsheet, and I can give you the best formula for whatever you want. But I need the calculator, because then like I don't want to say the wrong number. But it's so weird how all of those were like budget rules and regulations were implemented to benefit, I would say, the protection of the investors as well, because we come from, like in Mexico, I mean, there's teams that tanked. Veracruz is one of them. The owner was so corrupt. He was using it to actually get votes and funds for him to win an election in that region. And I feel like the MLS, at first I was like, man, why did the guy have all this stuff? But then it does make sense, because as you do something right, there's also incentives. So can you guys like talk to us a little more of, how everything and all those regulations and rules, you don't have to say them all, but just like in a specific main ones, how do they apply to Austin FC itself, like the team and the roster that we have right now?
Yeah, so like talking about why it's important, one of the reasons why, the reason they set the league up like that is because leagues before had failed. And so I think the biggest example was the old NASL, which New York Cosmos had Pele.
Right.
Beckenbauer.
Beckenbauer came over for a while. Cruyff was over
Like
for
in
a
the
while.
70s?
These dudes came and they were some of the biggest players in the world coming over and playing in MLS, but they went bankrupt in like a few years, and the other teams couldn't keep up. And like, so there's a reason why the rules are that way. It's because they wanted to build a league that's going to last. And so I think some people would argue, and I'm one of these people, that they've not accelerated that process fast enough to raise the spending. But all these, and again, like all these crazy rules, like I'm not going to tell people that they have to learn them. Mm-hmm. If you just want to watch the game, like that's completely valid way to enjoy the game. Watch the game. But I'm just like kind of a nerd about stuff, and I like understanding every little part of how it works. And if you want to get into that kind of stuff, then you kind of need to learn these other things. They're just like, it's like, oh, why don't we get another like really expensive players? Like we're not allowed to. It's like, why not? It's like, it's complicated.
I think we had our lesson learned when we talked about like Mexican players. I mean, how much they charge for a contract. And then the MLS is kind of like, unless you're Carlos Vela or Chicharito, it's going to be hard for one player to come.
Yeah, Mexican players are like overvalued in this market because, A, there's a lot of good players in Mexico, but B, because of the like Mexican American fan base in a lot of U.S. cities, that marketing reasons, the Mexican club is like, oh, we can tack on an extra $5 million to this transfer fee. And so it usually doesn't make sense to buy a Mexican player.
Right.
Yeah, I think like I was going to say just generally at the highest level on that, as far as the roster goes, like you've got 3 designated players, right? You know, and those are the people you can spend. I think this is how MLS is different than other leagues, right? You can spend whatever you want on those guys, right? Like Toronto's brought in Insigne, and they're paying him like $15 million in it's crazy. Yeah. What you can do, and then you have like your 4 through 7 or 8 guys or target allocation money players, and then like after that, you just have a lot of like guys who are just guys who are like you just roll the ball out, and whatever. And so like MLS teams are really dependent upon the people at the top end of the pay scale succeeding, because because of the way the structure works, you can't just make a mistake and then go out and buy another guy like you can in so many other leagues. So like if Cecilio Dominguez turns out to not be as like worth what you pay for him, then like you don't really have a good out to do. Like you can't just go find a really kick-ass left wing and like replace him. You just have to work.
Put Cecilio on the shelf. Like you have to get rid of him or stick with him.
Yeah, and so I think that's the thing that makes this league different than other leagues is like there's just not that much flexibility, and so like you pay for mistakes, especially mistakes at the top end of the roster.
Do you guys feel that Austin FC made a mistake in a player this past season?
Probably a few.
Do you want to name the guy you're asking about?
Which guy? Because like which guy were you saying like it could be like a player that didn't work out for us?
Pochettino is the biggest example, right?
Yeah. El Poch.
Man, that's the one player that I would say the last maybe 5 games that he played, and once he actually accommodated himself with Driussi, it felt like he was actually doing something very good. And I was like, I actually thought Cecilio Dominguez was going to be the one that's going to be gone, and Pochettino stayed because of how close Pochettino and Driussi were playing, like pretty much almost in the same side. And when I saw that Pochettino leaving, I was like, yeah, I think it had to be more than just a soccer thing. I think it was just like you were saying in your podcast, it could be a personality thing. That him being away from home, thousands of miles away, it played on him, in a tough way.
Yeah, and you have to find somebody that wants him. That was, he had a place to go too,
right.
and that was maybe not necessarily the case because just like they had to have a place to be able to offload him and and send him somewhere else. And like hopefully he's super successful and he's like off to a good start. And there's something that Austin saw in him, and clearly a lot of people see in him, where he's gonna be a talented player, but sometimes it doesn't work out. Somebody reminded me like Mohamed Salah was not very good at Chelsea, and he's the best player in the world, right? Over the last couple of years. So sometimes it's just like this weird combination of factors that lead to somebody to not succeed, or maybe they will succeed in the future.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that go into it: time, place, whether you fit into the system, whether the coach likes you, whether you can get along with your teammates. It's so many factors that all you can do is look at Pochettino and kind of wish him the best. Hopefully he does well in River so that it helps out Austin FC in the long run, right?
And the thing is, like, he's going to River. That's a very good club. I mean, to go to.
Yeah, it's not a small club. It's huge.
Yeah, we talked about on the show one week that it's interesting that he had a bad season in MLS, and then his reward for this terrible season was like going to River Plate.
Hey,
okay,
who is this man's agent? He needs to be my agent.
I mean, they probably. The thing is, like, they probably know who he is and what he can do.
That's what it was.
Yeah, and they're just like, you know what, we're just gonna, bring him in and give him a little love, and he'll be all right.
His stock was still high in Argentina because he was still a young guy, like 25, his last season in Argentina, and like that was kind of his breakout year. And so people there are like, oh, this kid's gonna be something. And I think because they saw that, they didn't let that bad season scare them off. It's like, okay, we can hopefully put him into a system that fits him a little bit better and turn him into a real player. And from preseason so far, it looks like maybe it's gonna work.
It's gonna work. Yeah, man. I mean, I wish him the best. I think he's a good player, my point of view. Like, even when I played him in FIFA, the closest I got to him playing with him, it would feel like, man, what the heck, dude? Like, when you're not, whatever you do here with me, you're not.
do more of that.
Yeah, I guess there was, because that was when there was like rumors for like a month before he actually signed.
There was rumors like every day.
But I watched some video of him and was like, what position does this guy play?
Yeah.
And it's like, he's not a 6. He's not really like a box-to-box 8.
Right.
He's not a 10. And so I think that's why it didn't work at Austin, is because the positional play system that Josh Wolf uses, it's like you need to fit this mold and you need to be able to do it the way that I'm telling you to do it, or it's going to mess up the guy next to you and the guy next to him. And he like either wasn't able to or unwilling to, and vice versa. Josh Wolf wasn't going to say like, okay, you just do whatever you want. It's like, no. Josh Wolf is about the system. And so I think it's, just kind of a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit.
I think he seems to be a very systematic guy, because I remember on the Houston Dynamo game where they got scored on super early, he talked about like how Danny Pereira was just not having a good day, and he had to take him out because he started noticing how, like, in his system of what he wanted to do, like Danny Pereira was just not in it. He was like, I had to take him out, and probably to protect him more than to make him look bad. So it was an early substitution, and because of an early goal. But like you said, man, Josh Wolf is a very systematic guy, and I think for the players that he now got, he had some input on who came in, because you guys were talking about Ethan Finley coming in, and he's the typical MLS player. But I mean, sometimes you need that typical MLS player to come in the system that you have, because maybe this is what Josh Wolf has, is MLS type of the game that for us is something different, because we're a little more of a technical, y pásala, y tócala, y aguanta, and Josh Wolf has a mix of that plus a mix of physicality. So
yeah, my hope for Ethan Finley is that he can bring just like a different flavor that we didn't have on the team. And today the preseason friendly against Toronto, Chris Bills was reporting from it, and he said that's what Finley looked like. He was like something just like a release valve, like that transition release valve. We didn't have guys who did that kind of thing. And so I hope you're right. I hope the tools that Wolf has this season give him a little bit more to work with and some flexibility to change certain things with personnel without having to like leave the system that he's trying to do as well.
Can you guys help us recall the players that came in that we now have signed and we can count on for sure in the roster?
Yeah, so we've got Johan Valencia, Ruben Gabrielson, who's a center back, Maxi Ruti, striker,
Ethan Finley, we've already covered.
Ethan Finley, winger,
and Felipe Martins.
Yeah, Felipe.
Martins.
I'm excited about that one.
And I think Asensio's the other one that we're missing.
He's not signed yet.
Oh, he's not.
He's on trial.
Yeah, he's on trial.
So,
Cincio, Keller would be the other one.
Kip
Keller
Keller.
would be the other
Kip
one that's
Keller.
in. Yeah.
For Kip Keller. Sorry, Kip, if we were hearing this.
Yeah.
We will never forget
Kip,
you again.
Kip, if you're listening, it's okay. Yeah. He's probably at the domain somewhere.
Right. He's probably at Concrete Cowboy or Kung Fu Saloon, making friends. But what do you guys think about the new players that came in?
I like them. Like, I don't know that there's any one of them that like raises our ceiling super high, but the fact that we have just more depth in certain positions and different options in certain positions. Our midfield last year was like pretty much we had 3 guys and they did what they did, and if you tried to move them out of that, they didn't really work anymore.
Not much
Now
variation.
the Felipe is one that I'm really excited about. He can play
Oh my gosh.
all
yeah.
3 of the
The
midfield
asshole?
roles.
Yeah.
Our new asshole, you guys said it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's classy though. He's good on the ball. So he played in that preseason today. He played at the 10.
Okay.
And so it was Wolf and Valencia behind him in like a 4-2-3-1, and he was playing the 10. And so he can do that. He can play the 6. He's like defensively strong enough to play the 6. And so just having a guy like that at your disposal to like so many games last year, Wolf would need to make a substitution, and you look at the bench and you're like, I don't trust any of these guys.
So you're saying
It's
you
not
didn't
going to be
trust
the
Brett
case this
Halter?
year.
Yeah. I mean, that was a position I was thinking about,
Right.
right? It's like if at a 6, if Alex Ring needed a break or needed to move forward, your options were either you play Danny Pereira out of position, because I don't think anybody thinks he's like a great defensive. Like, he's got a lot of skills, being like a destroying defensive midfielder is not that. Or you bring in like Sebastian Berhalter. Now
Right.
you've got Martin. If Valencia goes out, you got Martins. You can move Ring back. There's so many other things you can do. So we definitely have the depth that will hopefully hold up over the 34 game slog that is like playing in MLS.
Plus the Open Cup as well. That's another one that when you're
Yeah.
playing 2 tournaments, you got to have depth. What do you think, okay?
I'm super excited at all these acquisitions, especially Felipe Martinez. I think everything that I've heard about him, the type of player he is, the type of X factor he brings to the game, it gets me excited, because that's like how I like to see that. I like to mold my game. I like to be that 6, that rough guy in the middle that's just gonna like win balls back and just be that fighter and that warrior. And to see that was one thing when I was watching Austin FC last season. I was like, man, there needs to be someone like that. The closest thing, in my opinion, to that
Where you're about to like take your shirt off. And
was Alex Ring.
convert into Superman.
He showed that fight. He got a couple of cards. I'm not saying cards are good, but sometimes you need to rile a team up, and Ring was one of the few people I saw doing that. So I'm glad he's getting that help, and I'm glad Johan Valencia seems to be of those similar characteristics, kind of a box-to-box, very kind of defensive midfielder. So I'm definitely excited at this new depth, but I want to know what you guys think. What are some of the spots that we're still looking thin on, or we could still use a little bit of help?
I think the number one spot where we need help, because it's all unproven, it's like we are not deep at fullback, right? I mean, you got Lima, you got John Kolmanich, and you've got Hector Jimenez behind him, which is the main backup guy on both sides. And we saw last year, because we all went into last year thinking Ben Sweat was going to be our starting left back, and Kolmanich is going to be depth, that we're like one injury away from being like in real trouble there. You know, I mean, Kolmanich, he's still a young guy, right? Too, you know, I mean, he's young. He's had 1 year in the league, and he was thrust into something that I don't think that he probably expected to do, you know, and he had some limitations in his game. And so I feel like that's the spot where we're probably need the most help. I don't know where it's going to come from. And I don't think we're going to sign anybody between now and when the season starts. Maybe in the summer we will.
You mentioned Asensio. I mean, he's in camp and plays left back, so I think he's the obvious one. But if he doesn't show up in camp, doesn't look good in camp, then maybe he's not the option.
Yeah, that's the one thing is, if you have one left, like say if you're like right now, you got to have at least 2. One for each side, 2 for each side. And luckily we have Jimenez that can do both.
Lima can play both as well.
Play both
so
as well.
it's not ideal, but they can do it.
Right. But if you have an injury like what happened with Ben Sweat, then we're going to be in the same situation.
Yeah.
And I mean, like you guys were talking about Gallagher is, you know, him dropping back would not be a good idea. It would be, I mean, I think like the wingers, they have a little more of an easier like transition, stepping back a little bit. but not too much, because then they'll get lost in the coverage part. They can hold the ball, they can, stay open, they can do the overlaps, which Gallagher can do, but it's just the marking part. When you're a left back, that's your goal at the end of the day. Like, you have to be that defensive part, this defensive spot, like, or player on each side, whether left or right. And if you don't have that, experience, like you said, it would be probably not as helpful as we think it would be, unless Gallagher has something on his sleeve that we don't know about him being defensively.
Yeah, I think he lacks a little bit of physicality as well. That game he played right back at the end of the season last year, marking was pretty good. Like, he did a good job, but it was Johnny Russell and Kyrie Shelton who were like big dudes, and they were just throwing him around. And so he would jump up and challenge for a header and win one sometimes, but those guys were just tossing him. And so that's the thing. Like, as a winger, you work back and you mark guys, and it's usually against like a winger. But sometimes as a fullback, you float inside and you're going up against those strikers sometimes, right. And you have to be able to hold your own. And that's what would worry me about having both Jimenez and Gallagher as like the option starting like a lot of games.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know, like, it's one of those things that I still think, like, man, if there's a weak spot that we have, not because of the players, but because of, the thinness, it's just that unless Asensio shows up and really delivers in the camp, then we're in a good place. But
yeah, I think another big question is we had a season one where we struggled to score goals, and we played a type of game that was very towards the wings. We shot a lot of crosses in, but our finishing was very, very low. How do you guys feel about some of the acquisitions that we've made this season? Do you think we're going to have a higher rate of goals, or if we stick to that system that puts a lot of crosses in, are we going to have? Is there some? Who do you think is up there that's going to be our dependable goal scorer?
Why don't you start with that? I think you have an opinion on this.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm still pretty nervous about it.
I'm on your boat. I'm on your boat too, because I look around and I'm this is a big question.
Yeah, you asked who it would be, so like we have to assume that there's going to be somebody that does it right. But yeah, I think it is the big question.
Yeah, I mean the fact that we have strikers this year is a reason to have at least some optimism there. But Gite is unproven still, has the tools. I think he's still young, needs to get some experience before he does anything consistently. Urruti has proven to be a little bit erratic in his career as well. Yeah. So I think like there's a strong chance one or both of those guys go on little runs where they score, but I think there's equal or maybe more likely of a chance that they go on droughts where nobody's scoring.
That'd be tough to see.
I think Drew's is gonna prove himself to be one of the 5 best players in the league this year. Just if you look at when he showed up 10 days after he'd flown in and played in his first game, you can tell this guy, he's like playing a different game. Like everybody else looks like they were working. He was moving as fast, and he was, putting in balls that nobody could see and things like that. Like he's just playing a different sport than some of the guys that we have that are just like really good, hard working, whatever's. And so, like I think there's a ton of potential both in his ability to score and his ability to create. If the goals are going to come from somewhere, it's going to come from having a full season of him and a full off season of him integrated with the roster.
Yeah, he's the type of player that he's good. And he always, when you're that good of a player, you help your teammates get to that level by just showing up with them. I rarely saw him. There's players that are good, and unless you really can play like how they want you to play, then it just doesn't work out. And he has a thing where he's very, like I'm with you. Like, and the reason why I'm saying that is because the first game they were gonna start, I saw him talking to Cecilio Dominguez right before like they were gonna kick off, and he was telling them like, and calmado, like come down and talk, and that right there, that was Cecilio, like completely different player when Drusi came in. And like you said, like he has a potential to be the top 5. Luckily he stays healthy and doesn't get an injury, because he gets an injury. I did feel whenever he would come off a substitute in the previous season, we would be a bit alarmed because there was no one to just keep the team calm. Because Ring can only do so much as a captain, bringing the ball from the defense to the midfield and then from the midfield forward. And like say if we have a player like Drusi and a player like Ring out, and who's gonna step up and be the leader to calm the team down, especially whenever we're winning by 2-1, and we need someone to keep it calm and hey, let's just pass the ball around and keep the ball in our side.
I do think we have more of those guys this year, though, like that can step up and be leaders. Gabrielson was a captain at both of his past 2 clubs. Finley is one of those guys that just, like around the locker rooms that he's played in, he's just one of those solid dudes. I think him and like Matt Beasler are probably similar characters. Felipe seems like a dude that like teammates love. Like they love that guy. And so I think there's more of those guys on the team that can be those leaders. And Jeremiah talks about like if you're looking at like a ranking of who our guys are, like before, like on the wing depth chart, for example, you had Kukutamane. Now in that Kukutamane spot is Jared Stroud, who was a starter for a lot of the season last year. Right. And so like just we're better further down the roster, both talent-wise and I think experience and leadership-wise as well.
And one thing, like, I'm glad we kept Stroud because the 2-3 games that he actually did good, I'm like, man, if he have Stroud like that every time he comes in, that's another addition that you wouldn't have to worry about, like, man, is he going to show up or not?
Yeah, and that's one where, like, if you could just rely on Jared Stroud to come in for, like, some amount of time and do Jared Stroud things, he's going to be really good at that. If you're relying on him to start 24 games, and play a bunch of minutes, like, that is not his thing. But if you need a guy to, like, run real fast and throw in crosses for 25 minutes, like, he's your guy.
Yeah, there's late in the season last year, there's a couple of games where I think we were up and they put on Stroud and Gaines, like at the striker and at the right wing.
And it was like
just like
quick
chase cars, just like,
it was like an immediate
make them tired. It's like,
team.
I don't care if you even touch the ball, just like chase guys.
Yeah, and I think that's good because I did appreciate that from McKinsey Games, wherever you're at. Luckily, you're not here.
He's gone to the CLT.
And unluckily, you're not here. It's sad, but man, that's the one like sign that I was like, man, we should have kept. But you guys were saying that, it was like, if he's gone, it's fine. Now I feel confident, like, because at first it's like, man, okay, he's gonna leave. Now who we're gonna bring? But now that we got some good players in, I was just like, all right, I'm calm.
Yeah, I think we're stronger now. In those spots, like the spots that Gaines and Manny Perez and Kukutamane were filling, we've got better guys there now. So
Manny
feel good about
Perez,
it.
another guy that that he was young too. I mean, he was part of. He came as a loan from Seattle Sounders or from Portland, right?
Manny Perez,
right?
Yeah. I mean, like we saw enough of him that like I didn't think he was ever gonna turn into anything big. And I know like a lot of folks get mad at me for saying this, but Mackenzie Gaines is not going to be a top level MLS player.
Well,
he's not gonna.
Yeah, I thought he was.
You got to keep it real, man.
Yeah.
You got to keep it real.
I thought he was younger, but he was already 24.
He's like 24.
Right.
That's not that young.
Right.
I mean, like.
Yeah, I mean, it's young in the real world, by the way.
The same people saying that Rodney Redders is trash. We got to get rid of him. We're like, we got to keep Gaines. He's young and promising. It's like, come on, man. You're like, be real. Like, it's not the same thing. Rodney Redders is 22. And so he wasn't good. You're right. He wasn't good. But if you're ready to throw him in the trash and give Gaines a pass just because he's from Austin, like you're not looking at it realistically.
That's, that I would say like someone said like a typical Austin FC fan. And now we get that, that some people get that. Like I heard even whenever they were talking about Pochettino he's going to a much lower level league than the MLS. And I'm like, dude, what the hell are you talking about? But no, I know the MLS is growing and we do see that. But man, I did not think Mackenzie Gaines was that old until, you mentioned it. I was like, yeah. I mean, after like at 24, you're saying, unless you're gonna do something crazy, like you're gonna be the player.
You're the player you are at that point, basically, right? You're kind of developed. I mean, he was sweet guy, hometown boy, love
very
that
fast,
part.
very fast,
super fast. Yeah,
man. I remember the LA Galaxy game, and that day I was hanging out with Hernan and Brian from Top Flight, and we are soon to be. And that day I had a good amount to drink, and I completely don't know anything except for whenever I heard goal. I was like, yeah, I need to wake up and watch this game. Because I'm over here like walking around, like saying hi to people and, hey, how you doing? Good to see you. And I completely like forgot that, that, the game's already on. But I'm glad I got an Uber that day. But
So it sounds like you guys are a little bit more optimistic of this season compared to season 1. How would you rate that on a scale of 1 to 10? Your optimism level for this season?
It might be more reasonable to rate it on a scale of 1 to 13, huh? Like playoff spots.
14, right?
Was it 14 this year?
We got Nashville. I mean, this came up. Somebody asked us this last week. I mean, the hard part is like the Western Conference is pretty strong and added Nashville to it. So we could be better and move up like 2 spots, which nobody would be happy with. But I mean, it's going to be. There's probably 4 teams that are separating themselves, and it's going to be like a slog, from there on down. It's going to come down to who stays healthy and whose coach makes good choices, and stuff like that. So we're definitely better, but I don't know, like, relative to everybody else, like how much we've improved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would still say, like, getting a playoff spot would make me happy this year. And
that's how you would define a successful season.
I think that makes it that's what success would be. And
Playoff.
I think some Austin fans may think that's shooting too low, but like Jeremiah said, it's going to be tough.
No, yeah. I think the playoffs would be an excellent success for season 2. It's still pretty young. It's still a young franchise. We've made a lot of moves, but like you guys said, there's a lot of things that are unknown with how the season's going to play out. And it's a long season, a lot of games, and a lot of new players that we're wanting to just make automatically work, but we all know that teams don't work that way. Sometimes it's a long haul to try to get that team chemistry going.
I would say playoffs season 2 is good with every single regulation that it's put in place to build a roster. Because you at the end of the day, like say Austin FC didn't have a good season, but with limitations of what they can do, I mean, that just getting the playoffs with what they're building, that we know that would be a good thing. Like you guys said, I mean, it's a very, very MLS is a lot more complicated. Now for me, it's like the MLS and La Liga MX, they're so complicated because of their own ways of being and existing. It makes it harder or easier for some teams and to make it.
I think like LAFC in Atlanta gave people kind of a false sense of like how hard it is to start a team from scratch. More often than not, those teams have been bad, but people remember, Atlanta was good immediately. LA was good immediately. It was like, well,
the fan base was good.
Like they got Carlos Vela and they got Joseph Martinez and Miguel Almiron at the same time, which like any MLS team would kill for either of those guys at any point in their existence. And they had both of them at the same time. And so like they either did well or got lucky, probably a combination of both of those things.
And I think, if you look at them now, I mean, they were both struggling. Like they spent a bunch of money up front and were really successful off the bat. And they're both struggling with the repercussions of that, like down the roster, and now that neither one of them is good. Yeah. LAFC, all the Texas and California teams missed the playoffs last year, right? LAFC missed the playoffs despite the fact they had maybe the best on-paper talent in the league, and Atlanta has kind of lost its way. So, I mean, I think there's positive and negatives to doing that. And I think what we like to think about is, can we build the team like in the way that Portland or Seattle, does?
The way
where
that
like you're sustainable, or Nashville probably does now, where you're like, you have talent throughout the roster and you're not so dependent upon like all your stars all panning out and your big signings all panning out. And that's like the way you're going to be good year after year after year. And I think what should help us this year is, one, our schedule will be a little more balanced, right? Because we had that super long, awful road trip to start the year, and now we'll be a little bit, be a little bit easier. And then we have fewer like three game weeks. I think a lot fewer 3-game weeks right now. Which I think that really killed us last year because we were not very deep because we were an expansion team. And then we're an expansion team that also like just our good players were not available last year. Sometimes like when you're playing Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday, and so that'll help us out too, is to have that flexibility.
Yeah, I bet our wives are like, okay, they're not gonna be in a game every week or every other day.
I know. Well, lucky my 12-year-old loves to go.
Nice.
So, like, for us, it's like, hey, baby, I'm going to take Jackson, and we're going to be away. You know, we're going to get out of your hair for like 4 hours. She's like, yes, go wherever you want to go. It'll be fine. You guys go to Hop Squad, crush it. It's fine.
Nice. Did y'all go? Did you guys bring your family to the first game?
Yeah, my wife actually goes to all the games.
Oh, nice.
Wow,
She's
that's
like,
awesome.
she's gotten into it. She's not, didn't give a shit about soccer before. And it's like gotten really into it and like has learned quite a bit about it. And then my parents came to the first game, and I think they're going to try to come to a lot of games this year. So
That's good, man. You guys went to the first game, and you actually brought your siblings as well.
Yeah,
right?
my brother and sister. It was actually their first soccer game like live. Because growing up, it was I grew up with I'm the oldest at a 3, and me and my dad bonded over soccer. But it's something that didn't necessarily trickle down to my brother and sister. They just weren't into the game. So the season opener, I got them tickets, and I said, let's go. And luckily, yeah, they were down for it. And for them, it was like a totally different experience because they had only ever gone to see me play growing up. So they definitely got a lot out of it. And I think if I were to tell them, hey, let's go to the season 2 opener, let's go to the season 2 game, they'll be down to come through.
Yeah, it's I brought my wife too, and she was pretty excited. Like, she had just gotten off work, so she literally got there as McConaughey was coming out, dressed as the
It's the whatever. Yeah.
As a leprechaun.
the leprechaun. What's that guy? The villain with the questions mark.
Oh, the Riddler.
Riddler. There we go. One of those two.
That guy's something else, man. He was like promoting a book, like doing all this, doing all these movies, and minister of culture, like.
Well, you actually
It's a little
talked
weird.
about. You mentioned something about him. If he was known as the minister of culture or the ambassador of culture, but he only showed up to like one game. And you guys, I think you mentioned in your podcast that he needs to show up a little more. But I know there was some stuff, like I think with his mom or whatnot. But I agree, man. It's like, hey, dude, like, if you're gonna be the ambassador of culture, you gotta be in the culture.
yeah, it's like, I think he does help with the marketing of the team to people who wouldn't have paid attention otherwise. Mm-hmm. But I hear sometimes people giving him maybe a little too much credit for like how big the team is. Like, oh yeah, McConaughey. It's like, no. Like, what's happening in the South End was going to happen.
That's Los Verdes right there.
Yeah. It's Rigo, right?
Morgan,
It's
Rigo.
Rigo.
Saludos.
McConaughey had nothing to do with that part of it.
Right.
And so I like take umbrage whenever people are saying like, oh yeah, McConaughey's done something. It's like,
Nah, dude.
he probably, because he'll wear Austin FC shirt on the Tonight Show or whatever. Like, he'll be doing an interview about a movie. He's like, also I have this soccer team now. Like, that stuff matters. Like, it makes a dent in like
definitely that national exposure to people that aren't familiar with the game or Austin FC as a club. I recently saw him on the Men in Blazers show, and I was skeptical, like, all right, what is this guy gonna say, blah blah. But he gave a solid interview, and he really put Austin on the map for that show, like to a broader audience. And I think that's what we get from having him as a minister of culture. But culture as we know it is different. It's more like on the ground, boots on the ground. So I kind of have mixed feelings about it as well. Even though I'm like a fan of some of his stuff, it's just kind of weird. Because I went to UT. I went to UT as well, and he does a lot for the Longhorn Association and the football team, and it's just kind of weird seeing him step into so many roles in Austin and Texas, and you're like, all right, what is your motives? Like, what are you trying to do, really?
I think he cares about it though, which I think is good. He's not doing it for attention or whatever. I think he cares about it. I think sometimes he's like a Hollywood star, and like people don't tell him no, and so it's like it's just like we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this. It's like, what, they actually have their own thing going on, Matthew. Like,
Were you guys on that? Where he did that one Zoom call with him when he was like in a beanie and no shirt? Were y'all on
No,
that, or-
I did see screenshots, and I think because Roma posted something
He's
about
not a fan
it.
of clothes. I know that.
Yeah, he's not, and so, but there was a lot of, he's like, blah, 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 Hollywood guy. And then James Ruth, who works for the team, would be like, I think what Matthew's trying to say is, and he like converted to English. But, and that was like, I don't know about this guy, but at the same time, my wife, who doesn't care about any of this, she's like, oh, shirtless McConaughey on the Zoom. Like, suddenly she was paying attention.
Oh, there's a Zoom call. I want to be a part of it. You're like over here, working, and she's like, where you at? I'm in the meeting, okay? Just leave me
Yeah, I am
alone.
very busy.
McConaughey's talking about the culture.
Yeah.
Man, but I do hope he comes out a little more, and anything on his side, it also works out for him to come. I think it'll be good for him to get to experience more of something that was consistent, not just on game one, but actually through the whole season. And at the end of the day, like I would say, like we've said it in the past, the supporters are the ones that build the culture. Like earlier you were saying, I do wish the team would be a little more laid back and a little more flexible on not having too much control and let the supporters do their thing. Because if that relationship ever breaks, between the supporters and Austin FC, then we're just going to be another team that has fans, but it's not going to be as deep as it is right now. Because there's a lot going on. Like, I went to the La Murga's practice yesterday, and just seeing all the amount of people that were practicing.
So many people out there.
Many
I saw
people. It
videos
was like
of
100
it.
people, and I was like, dang.
I was in the Murga like in the early days, and there'd be like 5 of us out there. And so I've stepped back since then, and what those guys have done since then is amazing to me. Like they had like 15 people out there learning to play snare and repique, and then like 12 bombos or whatever it is. And it's crazy. It's really impressive.
And it's like say for example with La Murga and Los Verdes, a lot of the times is what you do within is always gonna pay out when you expose it. When you prepare yourself, it's always gonna show. And in the practice there, I would say even a lot more hyped up than the actual game, because they were doing the pretty much the whole song, like the set of all the songs at the end, everyone together. And Los Capos were the first one. They were just like going at it, and I saw Quesadilla take his shirt off. And,
Of course.
and I was like,
That's all he does.
yeah, I was like, dang. Like, I mean, it's the first time I've gone. Like, I've been wanting to go for a while, but I needed to, to work out some timings. But it was pretty cool because, I mean, people that really care about it. Like, I thought, like at first I was like, man, like these people care about it a lot more than we think of, and a lot of the credit is for them, man. And I know, like, they're working on some major projects going on. So there's going to be a documentary as well, and you guys were part of it. And it's pretty cool how we're actually not just a little supporter section that, that we chant and, we cheerleader. Actually, no, we're bringing up songs, and we're bringing up new songs. So they're actually starting to do songs that are dedicated to a specific player now. So that's pretty cool. And, I think the players are going to appreciate that, and hopefully they stay. But that's pretty cool.
It's the thing that I always hoped would happen here is that the creativity. Like I'm not going to be the guy to do that. And so it's like there's a lot of really creative people in Austin, and if we can give those people a stage to do something special, I know they will. And it's happened. Like the folks in charge of running supporters group, running La Murga, have made that happen and have given those people that platform. It's been really cool to see.
Yeah, that's when I have people that ask me about, like, how do we, game day one have this amazing atmosphere in this first year where it's, like, so loud and crazy and there's beer showers. Like, these people, it's kind of like the podcast. Like, these people have been working at it for, like, 2 years, practicing almost every week before we had a team. Like, this didn't just spring out of nowhere. Like, this is a lot of effort and creativity and, like, deliberate practice and showing up. Like, and all those, all those things that you saw is, like, they're into it. And it's super cool that there's this, like, big group of people that are that committed to it, that they see that it's like a privilege and an opportunity to like show up and work on songs and do band practice and stuff every week. Cause like, that would be a pain in the butt for me. Like this is not my thing. And thank God we have a lot of people who are like that way.
Yeah, ours more like, in the back end and the microphone, but
Yeah. I just talk all day long. It's fine.
And we kind of got into it a little earlier about that. Like, as long as you have that willingness and intent to contribute in your own way, it's the opportunity is there, and it's great to see how much involvement there is, even in like these preseason stages and prior to the team even kicking off its first ball. That just tells you a lot about the type of people that are joining, becoming part of this the fan clubs and just the fan base, and how kind of low the barrier of entry is. There's like no like gatekeepers that are really saying, hey, nah, you can't join or you shouldn't be here. It's very welcoming. And that's one of the biggest differences I see right now with like, that I've seen with the MLS and with this team in particular, how anybody, no matter how much you know about the sport, is welcome to come and enjoy and in their own way and be a part of it.
Yeah.
See, we have this thing in Los Verdes, which is not written down anywhere officially, but it's like, if you do the work, you make the rules. You know, right? If you have the passion, like nobody has status. Like if you have the passion and you want to come in and you want to put the time in, and, and it's the same in Lemurga. Like you can drive that. You make it forward. If you have an idea, nobody's gonna like sit above you and tell you your idea is a bad idea, right? You have that idea and you drive forward and you make it happen. And sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't. But like everybody has a fair opportunity to participate in the conversation and like make the culture on our own. And that's one of the things I love.
There are folks who have been involved for like less than a year who are like running teams of people doing stuff because like you're showing up and you're doing the work. That's what we need. So just because I've like Jeremiah and I have been around longer, we don't get to tell anybody to do anything because we're doing a podcast. We get to tell each other what to do with the podcast. But with the supporters group, it's like I'm just a member. I have no standing or title with the supporters group. And yeah, folks showing up and just putting in the time, they're the ones getting to make decisions, which is cool. It's like wildly democratic as far as like how it's run. And then like as far as art and stuff goes, like people who have shown up and just like, is it badass? Is it green? Cool. We're putting it on a t-shirt. And it's like, just like all kinds of people who come out of the woodwork and are doing all this cool stuff. And it's been really, really, really fun to watch.
Man, it's funny because like I've gotten a little more closer with Rigo, and he's a person that when it comes into La Murga and Los Verdes, he's a little more like intensive. Like, man, let's do it. Like let's get the paint right.
That's Rigo's church, man.
Yeah.
I know, he is. I mean, we might exclude Rigo from all these rules because he's got a very specific vision and he's really intense. I mean, I love it and we're all better for it. But he's like, you need to hold this banner like 3 inches up and like slightly to the left, or we cannot take a picture.
I can tell why Richie and Rigo get along because they're very, very similar like that.
If you tie the knot on the banner this way, you won't be able to see it from the front. And it's like Rigo keeps everybody in line, and but he knows his shit. Like he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, and you need something like that in a healthy ecosystem of organization. You know what I mean? So that's cool to hear, man. That's cool.
I remember I was helping him paint a banner. The only time I showed up paint something, and actually he was like, "Oh, you actually do pretty good painting." Like, "Oh, thank you." And then I was talking to my wife on the phone, and I was done, and he's like, "Hey, so you're gonna keep painting?" I was like, "Yes, sir." But I mean, he was just joking, but it's just like,
but he's not joking.
But he's not joking. But the thing is, like, he's a very serious dude. But once he talks, it's like you cannot get him to shut up. Like, he talks. Like we were like he's part of like the documentary. It was like an hour. And he just kept going at it, and Javi would have questions, and Rigo would just keep talking. And it was funny because it's like this one guy, and he even said like, man, usually like by myself, I'm a very calm guy, as you guys can see, like we see, first impression. But when it comes up to like Los Verdes, La Murga, once I get in that time, like in that zone, it's like I feel like a different person. Like something comes out where I'm very intense about it. And I do see Katie and Derek. They I mean, jokingly, but they bump heads with Rigo because Rigo is very particular. They're like, hell, man. But,
listening to Katie talk shit to Rigo is one of my favorite things.
No, and I like talking shit, so I'm always like on Katie's side. You talk shit to Rigo. Like, what do you think, Ricardo? I'm like, Katie's right. Nah, man, but it was funny because I noticed that when we went to Houston. And I was helping them. The only 2 times that I've done something there is like helping them put the banners in the seats. And Rigo's telling me to do it this way. And Kitty's like, don't worry about it. But that's like, I mean, literally like stuff like that, like inside jokes and things like that. That, at the end of the day, like they're all humans. They all have, jobs and they all have a life. But the fact that they dedicate so much and sometimes not get paid at all, like that for me, that's golden. Like that's where it's at, And I feel bad because, like, for us, we come in, like, we want to invite people, but our intent is to invite them to get to know the story, not to get clout from it. But I'm like, man, what have we done to actually, continue to get those, guests, because we always were like, yeah, los verdes en la murga, but it's like we haven't really showed up. But like for me personally, like I do want to do more, just because it's good to to continue to network and continue to get to know more people that are creative, and also like brings opportunities to do something different. Like say one day we can all merge and do a podcast, like one episode of all the podcast thing. That'd be pretty cool.
A super pod.
Super pod. There we go.
We need more microphones.
Yeah, for sure, man.
I need more microphones.
We need like splitters, microphones. People. I might know some, but they'll charge. But we can always just rent something.
You can rent them from Rock and Roll Rentals for super cheap.
There you go.
There you go.
You can get this mic for like $7 for like 2 weeks.
For 2 weeks. Yeah,
That's a good deal.
the road. But yeah, so one question that I have that we missed out yesterday. I mean, not yesterday, earlier. See, I have a memory of a goldfish, and it's very serious. And actually, I want to go back to it.
Serious question.
Oh man! All right. Okay, hang
We're
on.
getting down to the serious questions.
So
Clear my throat. I need more wine before we answer. There we go.
I've seen
Yes,
you-
I like. Oh, you just passed it. Yeah.
I've seen you like look at it, and I'm like, I feel bad because it's been empty, and I was like,
Hook me up, Jeremiah.
I got you.
but I'll let Jeremiah finish.
I didn't when we were interviewing Stuver today. That was water in my glass, by the way.
Oh, it was too early. Yeah, we had Stuver on the show. We did the interview early today.
Shout out Stu.
And I definitely wasn't supposed to be working when that was happening.
But that was
I
after
was-
work, right?
I was in the middle of a call, and I was like, oh, shit, guys, I got to go. I have a very important engagement right now.
My wife is calling me.
Yeah, I think the kids are on fire. I don't know. Yeah.
All right. Go ahead, Richie.
Yeah.
All right, what's the serious question?
The serious question is, if you were invited to a carne asada cookout, what would you bring? What would you each bring?
Oh, man.
Is it something that we can cook?
Or not
It could
cook,
be anything.
Because I'm like chicken nuggets from somewhere. I don't know. That's
No, we're gonna let you try again. Right?
that's all.
Think of it like this.
Let's do it to where you're actually committing yourself to cook something that you like. You know what? I'm gonna throw down in this carne asada.
Oh, man.
That your time to shine in that hour in the grill, like it's you. What would it be?
You're a dad. You know how to grill, right?
That's a prerequisite.
Yeah, I know. I know how to call people who know how to grill. That's what I do.
Just bring out your New Balances, your jorts. and,
Jeremiah's got
Yeah.
Jeremiah's like
What's
a
wrong with yours,
network guy.
As long
So-
as you're above the knee, you're
I
good.
got a guy. Who can
He's
do
just
that.
friends with all the neighbors, and he goes to their house.
Okay, he's a
No, you know
professional
what?
sampler.
Yeah, okay, there you go. This is what I bring is like I can make a mean Bloody Mary, and you're throwing shit at it. I love that.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, I will bring Tito's. I will bring bacon. I will bring olives. I will bring like with all kinds of fancy toppings. Like that's what I'm gonna do.
The roasted
I'm
chicken
gonna
on
run
top.
the bar, and I'm gonna get the guy who actually makes the meat really drunk. That's my contribution to this.
I like that.
I like that, man.
Didn't
That's
expect that.
I don't really cook that much either. My go-to, I actually do. I like bringing booze to parties
you go.
just because like everyone's you're gonna be popular, right?
Yeah.
My like last minute go-to for like not necessarily like a carne asada, but like just like a potluck thing or like people are bringing food. I'll go to like the HEB guacamole.
okay.
Oh, nice.
It's good.
It's good. Okay.
It's good quality. You just got to make sure it's fresh, you know?
Yeah,
hasn't
it's like
been
the
sitting
same
for too
day.
long.
But yeah, I'm not like a grilling guy.
Yeah.
And honestly, at home, I don't cook that much meat. But I spent time in Argentina and like learned to appreciate like the way they do asada there.
It's a big
They're like-
asada culture.
I was like, when I was down there, I was like volunteering on farms. I was like sleeping in a horse barn and like
You were
these
for real. At it.
these cowboys would come out and like, okay, like we just killed this lamb today. Now it's like splayed open and we're going to cook it over an open fire.
Oh, yeah.
And just like watching those dudes who just like did that. That's like, that was the weekend for them.
Nice.
And I was like, I'm not that kind of man, but I will eat this and be very thankful that you gave me the opportunity to.
You're like, you're not. However, I'll go to town and I will make sure they know that I appreciate this.
I will keep your wine glass full for you.
There we go. There we go. What about you, Coke?
No, man. So the whole reason behind this question, I think, is just we kind of like to think about this podcast like a carne asada, you know, chill, informal, but you know,
Right.
anyone is welcome. Anyone can bring their own contribution or thing that they want to display. And I think if I like to grill. These guys know I like to grill, and I've had them over at my place a few times. And my go-to is always like your standard fajita, like beef fajita. But I have my own little twist to it, like a little bit of an Asian soy twist to it. Give it that soy twang to it. So I think the last time I had these guys over,
Lost some foam.
That's fine. We'll be all right. Yeah, we'll be all right.
yeah, don't worry about that.
We've seen worse.
Yeah,
You see this scar right here?
my wife she's always on my ass about like how many people are going to show up. What's the head count? Why are you buying so much food? And I like to just I always estimate that more people will show up than I think will show up, and that's always a better strategy for me.
Yeah.
Because that's just kind of how I was raised. Make more food than you think because you never know what's going to happen.
Store it in the fridge and eat it for lunch.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So
There's you talked about doing like the Asian flair on your fajitas.
Yes.
On South First Street, there's a restaurant called Polvo's, and they do
yeah.
their fajitas that way, and it's
I
like
need to
a
try
soy
it.
sauce flavor to it almost, and that's like my favorite fajitas in
I
town.
need to go check that out. I hear they have good margaritas as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think I know what you're
the
talking about.
service is very poor,
Yeah.
but the drinks
Actually,
are
no.
good.
At the bartender that used to work there, they're like, yeah, I can see why.
Hey, shout out Polvos.
Is it fun?
But if you're looking to sponsor these guys, they'll totally, it's fine. We're fine. They're good.
We take sponsors from anyone.
Yeah.
No, FBF law. We're going for y'all. No, that's cool. And one question I want to ask is like, say the FBF law, like, how did that come about? Like, because you guys, I mean, you guys are sponsored by not just a company but a law firm. I mean, you guys get like, hey, you can't say this, or you can say this, or they let you guys be.
No, they let us do
No,
what we
they're
want, man.
Yeah, they're super cool. They've been really helpful and really supportive. And anytime we want to meet with them to make sure they're happy. They're like, every time we want, they're like, yeah, we're fine. Let's just go do whatever you're gonna do. Like, don't worry about it. So they're super cool. So we got introduced through Chris Quinn, who runs the partnerships for Austin FC, who I've known for a little bit. And he's like, you guys should talk to these guys because they're just like into Austin FC and into the fans, and they're really cool people. And then, we met them, and that's absolutely what it was. They're like they're just good people who are kind of looking to do stuff in a different way.
And we heard it was an injury law firm. We were like, if we want to work with people like that, you see like the dudes like
I don't want to work somewhere like that.
Yeah.
or it's like the dudes like the billboards and the TV commercials. Like, I don't want to be associated with that. But then we like looked up their brand online and got to meet with them. We're like, these are good people. Like they're doing it the right way, like the way that
They show the check
that
like,
job
yeah, actually, they're good people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like maybe I keep wanting to name people's names, but other people in that same racket, like maybe could write a big enough check for us to work with them. But like with FVF, like it was, yeah, we like they're just good folks and they're doing it the way it's supposed to be done. So we didn't mind taking on somebody who's in that business. So it was, yeah,
but
trust them.
That part of it is something we're not very good at. Like, we're not salespeople, and we don't. I don't know. Like, none of us want to make a call and ask people for money. So like, I don't like that sponsorship part of it's like not. We just want to talk about soccer, for every week, and so that whole like the business side of things we're not awesome at, and we probably never will be because it's not really what we care that much about.
We have a bank account now.
We do have a bank
Nice.
account, and we're like officially a business. So we're Moontower Soccer
LLC.
Yeah.
We're gonna change the name of the show to that.
Who's on your books? I know a guy.
I don't know. Do you know a guy?
I know a guy.
We're not. I don't think we're gonna make enough to have to pay taxes, Richie.
We got 2 sponsors already. They're like 2 of our buddies, but they're like $5 a month. Like, hey, we'll take it, man.
Whatever.
I told my wife we got sponsors. Like, how many? Like $5 a month. She's like, that's it. I'm like,
Oh, you know what? It's a good thing. My wife doesn't listen. She has no idea, and she doesn't need to know. Like, whatever. We may sign some big sponsor someday, and we'll never talk about it. Yeah, she'll never know about it. So all of a sudden be like, why do you have new everything? Like, I don't know, baby.
Why haven't you gone to work at the insurance company for a month?
Why did you buy a Louis Vuitton wallet?
Yeah.
That's cool, man. No, that's pretty cool because I mean, I think like one thing that I would say like came out from you guys is like something natural. and not something that you were looking for, in a specific. But the fact that they're letting you guys be Moontower, that's good. And I'm glad you guys are still being, as you guys want to be in a podcast without any limitations of, oh, you can't say this or you can say that. Man, and I hope, like every podcast out there, like they learn from what you guys are doing, like especially how you handle everything. Because you guys are, for me, like the way I listen to your episodes, like for me, it's motivational and it's also like an inspiration because you guys are very informative and you guys also like to talk and joke, and especially the Swoon Tower. That was my favorite one. I was actually doing that when I was cutting my hair. So it's like 2 a.m. cutting my hair and like just about to cut myself because I'm cracking up about this. So it's pretty cool, man. And I just
That's very nice of you to say.
Yeah, and let's keep it up, man. I like I know like here in Austin we're creating some stuff even like media wise. The guys at Top Flight are doing some good stuff as well. So I'm glad like we got people that want to do something like this.
It's cool that everybody's doing like kind of a different flavor, like, right. And it's like, I don't know, there's no reason to like be like competitive with each other, right? Like we can all kind of do it our own way, and like there's people who listen to all of them, and there's people who like jive with one of them, and that's fine. If you don't like us, great. Listen to Hernan. He's doing a great job.
Right.
Like, I think it's cool that there are people who listen to all of them, and people who is like, no, this is the one I like. This is what I'm going to listen to.
Right. And I think the audience bounces, between like the podcast like that we have in Austin. Because I hear, like, oh, I listened to this one from this one. I heard listen to this one from this one. And they like what we're doing, apparently. So that's good. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I love what Landon has to say about this because there's enough interest and time that like we should all work together. Mm-hmm. We all benefit from people listening and caring more and whatever. And like everybody's got their own voice, does their own thing. There's not one way to do it. Like, and I think it's cool. Everybody sort of just is themselves.
Mm-hmm. Right. What do you think? Okay.
I'm happy that you guys actually came on the show and gave us a lot of your insight, man. Like Richie was saying, just listening to some of your earlier episodes to some of the more recent ones, I've seen tremendous growth there, and I would hope that through our podcast, you guys have seen that too. It's just been kind of like a good ways of kind of getting inspired and bouncing ideas, like seeing how your team does things, how Top Flight does things, and just the fact that we can all like work together like in our own different ways is something special. And I think I just can't wait to see how it continues to develop throughout this season.
Well, I what I really like about what you guys do, about like the Top Flight guys do this too, but just like the shows will just be in Spanglish sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think it's awesome. Like that's the language of a lot of Texas, right? So
for sure.
Like we clearly can't do that, but like
El Viajero, come on, man.
El Viajero. Hey, what did you speak in Barcelona?
My Spanish is it's like pretty good, but I don't know how to talk about soccer in Spanish.
Yeah.
Like I would definitely have to do it in Spanglish because like
Spanglish.
all of the like in between words would be in Spanish, but then like I don't know how to say volley or whatever. Like there's like a bunch of words that I just don't know.
Yeah.
Volea.
Okay.
There you go.
I tried to. I have some vocabulary, but like I can't speak about it naturally in Spanish. But anyway, I think it's just cool that like there's a lot of people like in this town and in this state that identify with that. That's the way they grew up, the way they live their lives, and so I think it's awesome that y'all are just like doing that. Like no, we don't have to stick to English. We just switch back and forth, and it's fine.
It's gonna like talk about like the way you talk every day. That's how it is.
Yeah, it's great. It feels like watching y'all's show. It's like three friends hanging out, and
pretty much.
And it comes across that way. Right. So it's cool.
Yeah, like we like having an outline, like more as a guidance, but more like what? Sometimes we don't follow the outline. We just talk about like other stuff.
That's great.
And unless we really like, there's a quiet moment, like okay, so the outline was. But, yeah, man. No, but I appreciate you guys coming and thank you guys for everything and continue to to keep going at it. I know there's a lot of cool things going on, in the upcoming season, and yeah, man, that's like our friends are in Macala, like how they say in that song. So
yeah.
Coque, ciérranos.
Thanks everybody. Thanks everybody for listening. This has been a great episode of Otra por favor, a collaboration here with Moontower Podcast. Please continue to listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. Hit that like button, subscribe. Let us know what you guys think. Slide into the DMs, Otra por favor at Twitter and Instagram. So thanks everybody, and thanks Jeremiah, Landon.
Thanks so much,
Cheers
guys.
to you guys.
Appreciate it. Cheers.
And we hope to continue to cross paths and see where this thing takes us.
For sure. Ahí cuídense y adiós.